I was driving just now and I was thinking, like, why is it so important to me to document my whole life? Why do I just stop in the middle of nowhere sometimes, pull off on the side of a road, and just start talking to the camera as if anybody cares what I have to say, or as if I have anything that's even remotely important to say? I mean, I really thought about that a lot today. Like, what am I doing? Why is it crucial to me to document my life? And why do I think it's important for anybody? You know, I'm, I'm not really positive, to be honest with you, but what I kind of thought of was today I was wondering if I could identify like the 4 or 5 greatest moments of my life. And it was really hard for me to do that, to like pick out 4 or 5 moments, things that happened that were absolutely, without question, like something I could never forget, something that stopped me in my tracks, something that was, like a real highlight, different than every other day, not the same, something to be talked about for the rest of my time. And I couldn't do it. I mean, of course, I have a couple of things that might fall into that category, but, like one of them was the day of my wedding, but my marriage broke up. So what does that mean, I was an athlete my whole life, so I'm thinking about like sports moments. And to be honest with you, I care so little about sports now as I've gotten older that I can't even remember half the things that I did. And I was a really good athlete. But, and I remember certain things, but they don't mean anything to me now, Maybe watching sports from other people, like I remember certain things that my father took me to, events that were like big deals to me. But then I started to think, all right, if you can't pick out 4 or 5 individual things, maybe you could pick out 4 or 5 periods of your life, And so maybe like, living in New York City for most of my life, there were certain periods that were more significant than others. And, I could point to those moments. But again, like, I don't know, it's just kind of vague to me, Certain gigs, when I was in the music business, playing in bands, being on the road with people, being in the studio, working on my own albums. I mean, I've accomplished so much. I have like over 500 songs recorded. I have, 2 full-length feature films. I got 3 full-length plays, solo plays. I've performed all over the world. I've done a lot, I've won awards. I've accomplished a lot. But does any of it really stand out to me now? Like I know, I think a lot of people have like these moments where they'll say that was the greatest moment of my life, the day my son was born, or something like that. And what kind of messed me up a little bit was it was easy for me to pick out 4 or 5 of the worst moments of my life. I mean, you know what? I've had so many of those that I can't even keep it down to 4 or 5. Like I can't even quantify which would be higher on the list or lower on that list. But I've had plenty of those. And I just thought, what does that say about me? Am I, like, it's just kind of weird, you know what I mean? Because I know a lot of people who think this is crazy, who know me, but I consider myself a pretty positive person, Even though I know a lot of people think I'm so intense, and I'm so preoccupied with injustice and things like that, and racism and misogyny, and, I make all my work about that, but, I enjoy that, believe it or not, like it makes me feel like I'm not just wasting my time, just taking up space, doing silly things, like I am a serious person, I mean, people who really know me know I could be funny and clown around, and I love to joke people, and I love to prank people and stuff like that, do crazy shit. But yeah, I am a very serious person. And you know, I would say that is a more prominent part of my personality for sure. And so what I realized was, you know, I can't remember a lot of things, or, well, I can't say that. That's some bullshit. I remember almost everything. Like, I've often said that one of the things in my life that's almost a curse for me is that I remember everything, you know. Like, it's hard for me to forget anything, even though sometimes it's hard for me to remember people's names and, you know, little kind of details. I actually lost a good friend because I couldn't remember the name of one of her plays. Like, I misspoke, and I called one play a different play, and she just cut me off like I was a horrible person. You know, I do forget stuff like that, and, you know, I could attribute that to having many concussions playing football, being knocked out cold a bunch of times, and I worry about that too, you know. But generally, I remember pretty much everything. You know, I'll remember something you said to me 20 years ago, and I'll remember exactly how it felt, what I was wearing, and where I was, and what you looked like, and, you know, I'll remember everything about it. And so, here's the thing. And this is going to sound kind of weird, but some of the worst times in my life were the best times in my life. You know, I've experienced a lot of loss, you know, and I just think about my relationships with my parents, for example. You know, without question, the best time of my life, best time of my relationships with them was when they were dying. You know, I got to take care of both of them right to their walk to death's door, you know, like two people who adopted me, who gave me a permanent home, who saved my life, basically. I had very difficult relationships with them, you know, it was not good. And, you know, I can't really blame me or them or whatever, it wasn't very good. I was a hard kid, you know, I was difficult to communicate with. And, you know, I could criticize them for a lot of things too, but, you know, basically they were good people, you know, with great intentions. And, you know, they didn't have any ill will towards anybody, really. I never heard them wish anything bad on anybody. I never really heard them say bad things about anybody, which is really unusual because now everybody I know says bad shit about other people. And I think social media has a lot to do with that, you know? Like, people just talk shit about other people all the time. I never heard my parents do that. I never heard my grandmother do that, you know, and the loss of her life too was like, I had a beautiful 2 weeks with her, which was absolutely the hardest 2 weeks of my life. And I wish now that I documented it so I could remember exactly why I was feeling the way I was feeling and what I was going through. And I wish I was a filmmaker at that time, and I wish I was carrying a camera around with me, because honestly, I never find myself feeling like I just don't feel like recording, you know, or I just don't feel like writing or whatever. Like I never find myself feeling that way. And to me, that's like proof that I'm an artist to myself. Like, why would I even want to stop and make this video if I'm going through thoughts like this? You know, like, do I have even one good moment in my life? But I want to document what I'm feeling right now. And it's making me feel like sometimes we don't appreciate things truly until they end. We don't really take stock of what we have, you know, what we should be grateful for, and what is wonderful in our lives, you know, and what we're lucky about, you know what I mean? What could be much worse. We don't really do that until it's gone, you know? And I know, well, I'm not speaking for everybody on earth, but I'm talking for myself. Like, I'm somebody who has taken a lot for granted over the years. And I think that's why I became an artist. And, you know, and a lot of my work is such kind of memoir oriented, you know, where I'm writing about my life all the time. And even when I'm not writing about my own life, I'm writing about these fictional characters that I create that are based on people in my real life. Like I'm kind of navigating backwards through my life to make sense of it all, to figure out if I had a good life, you know, if my life meant anything, if I can even call upon 1 or 2 or 5 moments that were like, oh yeah, those were the highlights. Like, I wish I had documented more, but I'm grateful that I'm documenting now. But I don't know what that really means. I think what it means is that you got to be where you're at in the moment, and you have to really, maybe this reminds me of paying attention to what's happening right now and looking through a different lens, a 50 millimeter, a 28 millimeter, a 75 millimeter, like, that's kind of a metaphor, but looking at the world through this lens, through different apertures, choosing what to focus on with my aperture, choosing different light. Do I want to make this dark? Do I want to make it light? Like, what does it feel like? I'm kind of creating a memory, literally. I'm creating something that people are going to be able to watch over and over and over again. With my theater work, it was like a traveling movie. Like I'd write a play, and I'm a solo artist, so I'd write a play and I'd get to perform it all by myself on stage, and I get to travel all over the country and in some cases all over the world, and I'm like retelling the same story over and over and over again in what is the oldest and most ancient, and in my estimation, the most precious type of storytelling known to humankind. But what I love about filmmaking as I get older is that it stays, like theater goes away. Like nobody's remembering me coming through their town doing my play that much. Maybe once in a while they do, but like Cinema Paradiso is my favorite film. Everybody who knows me knows that. I talk about it way too much, but I have to watch it at least once a year to feel, I don't know, like I feel like I have to go back to that film all the time. And I think whoever created that film, would be so happy to hear that somebody was so deeply affected by it, that it resonates so deeply with someone that they have to go back to it every year. Islands in the Stream. It's a Hemingway story. It's a great film too. It's something that I watch all the time, and I realize the reason I watch it is because the lead character of that film, played by George C. Scott, reminds me of me. He's like chose his career over everything in his life. He lost his family. He lost his relationship with his kids, his wife. He really had no, real deep friends that he valued more than his writing and his work. And in the end, I think he felt like he wasn't sure if it really meant anything, He wasn't sure if he had made a decision that was really worth a lifetime. So, I don't really know what I'm saying here, except I think it's really important to document every day of your life, and I do that. And you don't see all of it, but I document it. But I don't have kids, so who's going to be able to watch it when I'm gone? I don't know what's going to happen to all this work. But I'm glad I document it for myself, because it reminds me to look at the world and to remember what I'm looking at, Like I'm looking at a cornfield right here. I mean, I lived in New York City my whole life. Well, what the fuck is a cornfield to me? But it looks so beautiful. You could see the mountains back here in New Paltz, New York. I mean, even this road is beautiful, Like, I don't know if it's funny. I do feel like that about the Major Deegan Expressway or the Cross Bronx or the West Side Highway. Like, I have deep emotional responses to those roads and to bridges. You notice I have bridges in so many of my videos, and it's because I love bridges so much. They represent so much to me, just what a bridge means, And also they're beautiful. So, yeah, I think if you're an artist, it's really cool to be able to document, and maybe it's a reminder to appreciate what we have before it's gone. It sounds like such a stupid cliche, but that is really what I'm getting at, I guess, today. It's like, I'm trying to appreciate things before they're gone. Because, one thing I've learned in my life, and I've lived a long life so far, thank God, and I hope it continues, but, most of life is irrevocable, like when it stops, you can't go back. When something ends, you might want to try to like revisit certain things, but it doesn't usually work that way, Like you have to maintain, the most important part of life is consistency, to maintain things, to get through the highs and the lows, to be willing to fight for the things that are the foundations of your life, the things that mean something to you, the things that hold you together when you're having difficult times. And so I think filmmaking reminds you of that. It's like you're looking at stuff, and everything you look at is crucial. How are you going to frame it? What's your composition going to be like? How are you going to expose? What are you going to focus on? It's all really important. That's the way we should look at our lives. That everything is really important, that nothing is unimportant. And if you're going to release something, if you're going to really let something go, like really think about that first, because it'll never be the same. Once you really let something go, I don't believe it's ever the same. I used to have this thing where I'd want to, at the end of the year, kind of reflect upon somebody who I might have lost in my life, a friend, who I want to just fix that relationship, go back and just fix it, and apologize, or even if I didn't have to apologize, just go back and just reconnect, And I have yet to be able to do that where it's been even remotely the same as what it was. And change is good and all that kind of stuff. But longevity is good too. Time means everything. Getting through unspeakable experiences together, I think, is a life well lived. And documenting every day helps to build those muscles, I think. And I think that's why that's why I'm kind of grateful for COVID. I never would be doing this if it wasn't for COVID. I would be on stage somewhere right now performing a play. Performing a play that's totally disposable. Like I do it and it's gone. Like the only people who get to experience this play are me and the people in the theater that night. And even if I do the same play over and over and over again every night for 6 years, every single performance is completely unique and different. And that's something that I used to love about theater and still love about theater. But, I think it's interesting that I wound up in the theater because it kind of mirrors my life. Things come and they go. It's always been that way. My life started that way. I was born to this woman, Judith Seidenberg, and the moment I came out of her body, some stranger took me away, and who knows where they brought me, And then I lived in like 3 foster homes before I was finally adopted to a family that thought I was cute enough to make permanent, or whatever their criteria was. Who knew? Like, how could the first 3 families have me for 6 weeks, 8 weeks? Like, I wasn't even 3 months old, and I had already lived in 3 different places, and I already had 4 different names. And so theater is so much like my life. It's happening right now, but that's it. Who knows what's next? As my grandmother used to say, anything could have come of you. You should be so grateful for what you have. Because when I was having difficult times with my mother and my father, she would say, fix it, because anything could have come of you. You're here because of them. And filmmaking is more permanent, And so hopefully, at this late stage of my life, I'm learning to do better, to, pay more attention to that type of thing and stay open to beautiful things. And who knows, maybe I can go back and fix certain things that broke, that I feel weren't fought for enough. You know what I mean? Like, I think life is worth fighting for. Relationships are worth fighting for. Those are perhaps the only things really worth fighting for. I don't know. I used to think like being a professional football player is worth fighting for. Getting a record deal is worth fighting for. Getting a film right now on HBO, is that worth fighting for? I actually appreciate my freedom of being able to do it any way that I want to do it. Nobody telling me what to do. I can be totally creative in any way that I want to. I have complete and absolute freedom. Now, I would certainly love to have my next project wind up on HBO or Netflix or whatever, or in a big theater. Although I was just in a big theater because my last movie, won Best Coming of Age feature film at the Manhattan Film Festival, and we saw it at Cinema Village on a big screen, and it was the most beautiful, magnificent experience ever, until whatever's next. And so I'm learning. But one thing I'm grateful for is the ability and the knowledge to build this muscle and document something every day, and filmmaking gave me that, and I think that's the most valuable part of filmmaking. And everything about it, like I talked about before, choosing your focus point, choosing your exposure, you know, your lighting, your white balance, your colors, like everything is creating the memory that you want to create, you know. In a way, it's kind of weird. Like, that's why I love documentaries, which I haven't done one, but I will do one. It's like you can't manipulate that. Like, the story is what it is. You're just trying to make it a beautiful memory, but you're not writing that story. You're documenting the story that is being written. It either has been written or it's being written right before your eyes, and that's a beautiful thing. My fiction work, you know, when I create stories and I create, you know, environments and scenarios and stuff like that, I kind of write it like a documentary, like I live it. I get out in the street and I write films and screenplays like a theater artist, you know, like I write and then I memorize 8-10 pages and then I go find myself like a basketball court or some remote area and I just like perform it like a one-person show. And that's how I get to the next 8 pages or 10 pages. And so I'm kind of documenting what's happening along the way, but then I get to create something that's going to live forever, that was worth fighting for, that I'm never going to forget. So yeah, now I'm repeating myself, so I'm going to stop now. But yeah, documenting is really important. Filmmaking is so important. And you know, I guess what I get out of this is trying to figure out now, and I'm writing a new script right now about these issues that I just talked about. And I think hopefully I'll write the best story of my life. And then when I finish, hopefully I'll do better.